Good afternoon, this is Trader Dan. It is Tuesday, July 26, 4:51 p.m. and the market is closed. This is going to be a quick recap of my trading for today. I did not trade the morning, which is when I normally try to trade. I needed to take some time off and I just wanted to give myself some room to breathe. So I actually spent the morning focused on exercise and taking care of some administrative stuff for the house before I moved into trading. If there are any questions about me and who I am and why I trade, how long I've been trading, am I profitable or not, there are two other videos. The very first one where I told my wife that I lost $630 something. You'll learn a little bit more about me in that. But in the meantime, I traded AYLA and I didn't get into the market until roughly 2:30 or so. As you can already see on the screen, I trade using Fidelity. It's not an ideal platform for an active day trader, even though they do have their own quote-unquote active trader platform. I used that before and I just, haven't really found the most satisfaction with it. At some point, I'll eventually migrate out of Fidelity. But for now, I've been in with Fidelity. My money's been there for quite a few years. I've gotten comfortable navigating the way that I trade within them. So for now, I'm staying with Fidelity until, I'm ready to move out. When I came into the market this afternoon, the first thing I did was I checked the Fidelity stock screener. I have this preset to variables that I like, including security type, security price, percentage change, volume today, volume 90-day average, shares out, total shares out, and the exchange. Now I will tell you that generally what I do is I take a quick glance at the percentage price change to see who are the top gainers. And what I saw was essentially what you see on the screen right now, which is AYLA was leading. Actually, at the time when I first checked in, they were up 140 something percent, which was pretty amazing. And quite a few others were up further than this, I believe. GOVX, which is now much further down, was in the 40% range. Yeah, look at that, it got pushed all the way down after a huge sell-off towards the end of the day there. And then there were a couple of others here that were higher up. FRGT, I believe, was at 90%, maybe 80% when I first checked in, around 2:30 or so. But everyone has significantly pulled back as the overall market has pulled back a little bit this afternoon, pretty much giving back all of the gains from yesterday and the day before as it continues to figure out if it's going to go higher or lower. So that being said, at the time, I liked the way AYLA was setting up. So here on the top side of the screen, I've got my 1-minute chart, my 5-minute chart, and my 15-minute chart. Now they're pretty marked up because that's generally what happens throughout the course of me watching a stock. And I'll start throwing all sorts of in there just to keep my eyes focused. Believe it or not, I do find this helpful. I'm a very, very visual person. I know for many others that have no idea what's going on here, or even for more experienced traders, they might say you've got way too much stuff on the screen. And perhaps I do. And eventually I'll get more comfortable not having that stuff there once I can recognize the variables without the indicators. But for now, this is the way that I'm training my eyes, and it works for me. And for the past 4 days, I've been fairly consistent with it. No giant profits, but consistent profits, which I like, that I feel that I can scale. And I'll talk a little bit more about what's also helping me to feel more comfortable trading the last few weeks in general. Certainly within the last 2 years, because I've been trading pretty much every day since 2020. No surprise there, the pandemic, right? But I've been very dedicated about this. I've been building off of a lot of stuff that I've learned since 2014 when I first took an interest in trading. And between 2014 and 2020, I didn't really trade actively. Since 2020, I have been. So my skill set has been growing, which I'm very proud of. But I'll show you where I started at roughly 2:30. So let's see here. I'll set this up on the 1 minute. Where are we? So this is roughly 2:30 here, and we see that AYLA had already pulled back quite a bit coming into the 1 o'clock time range, and so by 2 o'clock, by the time I came in, it had already bounced off of this low here, this daily low, or not quite the daily low, yeah, this higher low off of the daily over there. So that's a nice little setup, moving its way back up to the VWAP, which is this orange line in here. And so what I was looking for was to see if coming into the end of the day, there might be a push to go higher and retest the earlier highs today of 230. Wanted to see what power hour would deliver. Now, of course, some of you may already recognize this red box and the green box. These are our supply and demand zones. The red box being a supply zone. So, you know, even though the stock when I came into it was already moving into back into a supply zone, which generally some folks might say, you know, it could get rejected out of there, I was still saw a setup that I like as we moved closer over here to, you know, to 3 o'clock. And even though it had bounced off of VWAP one time, two time, and cracked through, I saw an opportunity to retest VWAP for at least a 10-cent push through VWAP before coming back down. And in fact, that's exactly what happened. So this was my first entry here at 303, and that was at approximately 194, I believe I got in. I got in a little higher than I would have liked. I was trying to get in roughly around 190-ish. Nevertheless, I still was able to get a good 10 cents out of it. Not a huge position, but still, you know, a nice confidence booster considering that the overall market was trending down at this time. And again, you know, I'm not, you know, I'm still working on building my confidence in my own skills. And so that was a good way to start the day, the session. And then I took two more positions a little later. I generally, you know, allow some time between positions, roughly 15 minutes to a half hour, to allow certain things to set up the way that I like to see them. As you can see, this stock continued to range at the bottom end of this supply zone. So that showed a little bit of strength. Of course, you know, it eventually broke through it, but you know, in previous experience, if it can hold through the bottom of the supply zone and work its way back up, you know, then it can actually break out of there with some strength. And I believe GOVX did that on a supply zone that I had set up yesterday, and it broke through big time. As you can see, of course, it did not happen today. So my second position was here at 336, and I saw another little setup that I liked, proceeding to this this key level that I set up here with the dotted line at 205.33. And that is actually, I believe, a 4-hour, it's either a 4-hour, yeah, I believe that's a 4-hour 200 moving average. And I suspected there might be some push towards that, and there was, and I was able to get another 5 cents out of that roughly, which is fine. And then there was a big drop down here into VWAP, and I got a little ambitious. There was no real signal there for me to buy like the other two. The other two were very clear setups that I look for. This one was just me thinking, okay, it's you know, dumping into VWAP, which is the orange line again. You know, maybe there'll be a nice little bounce off of here, back up to 205 and maybe beyond. So I gave that a shot. I got in at exactly 2. I initially had a winning stop limit set. Unfortunately, as it broke back down on this candle here at 341, it broke down hard, ripping through my stop limit, or rather the stop portion of my stop limit, and so left me sitting with an open limit order, which I did not like. So I immediately cut that at 196. Now that's still within range for me because I had generally I allow for about 10 cents room for a stock to work. So I got in at 2, I got out at 196. You know, I could have let it go a little further, but I think I made the right decision because, as you can see here, it just kept going down. So staying in for the full stop would not have served me in any way, especially because the way it cracked through, I just didn't like the way that felt, and rightfully so, it just kept coming down. And as it broke down out of the lower part of that supply zone, you can see it just kept ripping through the top end of this demand zone, and it just never stopped until, well, slight bounce down here in by market close. And that was pretty much following the overall market following down. So that being said, small winner today. which is fine. I can add that onto yesterday's win, my break-even day on Friday. Well, a tiny little loss on Friday, roughly $6, so that's like a break-even, and a bigger win on Thursday last week. So that's roughly 4 days in a row of pretty solid trading. And I just want to share some insight on why I think what allowed me to do that. And honestly, I think I have to credit the gentleman named Mark Douglas. I'll look him up here very quickly. Mark Douglas, trading psychology. This is a gentleman that I recently learned about that is a trader. I'm not sure if he still trades. He probably does. He still seems young enough, but he can certainly make plenty of money now off of his speeches and his books that he's authored, which are many, as you can see here in this window. But he is more famously known for these two books, The Disciplined Trader, Trading in the Zone, and also for quite a number of talks that he's been giving on trading psychology. So as I said, he comes from a trading background. He's not a psychologist. He's not an MD. He is a trader first, but he has learned to really extol the virtues of trading psychology in his talks, which is fantastic because it's a trader's perspective on trading psychology, not a medical expert or psychologist perspective for traders, which can be a little hard to penetrate sometimes. So that being said, he talked about in a few videos that I watched, he talked about this concept of probability. And I'll put some links to his videos down below to help you guys out for anyone that's interested, because I feel like this has really changed the game for me when he talks about trading probability. He was saying that when traders, ordinary traders, like me, retail traders, we're constantly messing up because we're thinking emotionally. We're not thinking in terms of probability or statistically. And the top traders, what they do is they focus on not how much money they can make. That's always in the back of the mind, of course, but it's not the first thing on the top of the mind when they're just about to enter a trade or they're managing a trade. What they're asking themselves is this trade, and I'll come over here back to the charts, for example, is this potential entry here, given where it's at, what's the probability that it's going to work in my favor, given the variables and the edge that I believe that I have? So for me, for example, specifically, prior to my taking that entry, and given the variables that I've learned to work with, where I saw the stock showing some strength that was of interest to me, the probability was in fact more in my favor to move at least 5-10 cents more. Why? Because it was still very close to the VWAP, and the VWAP generally has room for strength. I didn't ask myself, how much can I make out of here? I didn't ask myself, what if I lose? What if I win big? I didn't ask any of those emotionally triggering questions. I focused on the probability of whether this stock, given its position, given my edge, would be able to move 5 or 10 cents more. And it turns out the answer was yes. And as you can see, that's where I got in, and it literally, as soon as I got in, it popped up roughly it popped up. Yeah, I got in at 194, so it popped up another 6 cents right away. And then just kept going from there up until, I got stopped out, which was fine. And it was a good stop also. So that's what I did for the second entry. I didn't do that for the third entry. And now, in retrospect, I realized, I got to be more careful there, because even though there is a strategy that says, a bounce off of VWAP is a play, there was no setup. Like I had a clear setup signal here or a clear setup signal here. That was just simply me saying, bounces off of VWAP had worked before. It's not exactly an emotional decision, but it's also not a rational, probability-oriented decision the way I handled these two other entries. This entry, I didn't even ask what's the probability. I just said, let me try. That's on the verge of an emotional decision, if you will, because it's true, you don't know how any of these trades are ever going to result. But if you think in terms of probability, like Mark Douglas says, you allow yourself to pick and choose more carefully. For example, previously, After this trade, I probably would have tried to trade all of these, looking for a bounce that was, maybe go all the way up, looking for a bounce and maybe go all the way up. And that's someone's strategy, but it's not my strategy. And so when I learned to think in terms of probability in relation to my specific strategy, none of these trades in here mattered. And I no longer worried about it. I no longer thought about FOMO, because even if they had ripped higher, I simply would have adjusted my eyes to look for my variables at a higher place that could potentially continue up. So this is another mindset shift for me that I think the thinking of probability has helped, which is that, I'm no longer worried about missing out, because if the stock is moving strong, that's already a plus in my favor. And I'm just going to wait to see if it sets up in my favor at a higher place, versus let me try to get in anywhere along the way up, and then you just keep getting stopped out even as it's going up. So I hope that makes sense to you guys. What I will say is watch Mark Douglas, listen to him closely talk about probability, read his book if you get a chance. I have it already queued in my Audible. But the talks that I've watched alone have really sunk in, and I've been really applying those lessons already. And today I've traded my most confident in a very long time. In fact, ever probably. I really feel like I'm getting a handle on eliminating, trying to find things in here and feeling like I'm missing out, or trying to guess where a bottom is, and just forget about guessing and just look for where my strategy is. And my strategy right now does not have me looking for bottoms, so I don't even sweat that. My strategy right now does not have me trying to figure out a range, so I don't even sweat that. I look for very specific things off of a bounce with potential to retest certain key levels. If there's no key level involved, then I'll ignore it. But as you can see, there are quite a number of key levels here. We have the VWAP, which was the first test that I was looking for. We have the $2 price range, which was the second test that I was looking for. We have the 50 moving average, which was a third test. And then finally, the fourth and final test, which failed on this first pass, was that 4-hour 200 moving average at 205.33. As you can see, even though it came back down through VWAP, it got bought up pretty well down here. So that put me in another prime position for this setup over here to, off of VWAP, hold the $2 line, hold above the 50 moving average, and retest at least this 205, 200 moving average on the 4-hour timeline. And we did that, but it did not hold, so we came crashing back down. Like I said, there was no setup here for me, so that was a big mistake on my part, but thankfully, because my risk management is strong, I was able to keep that. I recognized my error, that I did not apply a probability mindset, and I was able to execute my risk management quickly and cut my loss quickly. So I still walked away with a win instead of a loss, instead of giving back my wins from over here. So that's a trend that I'm looking, or pattern that I'm looking to continue working on within myself, which is to keep building off of a probability mindset that respects the rules clearly and keeps me out of, over trading and being worried about missing a trade or missing out on wins. Or even, leaving money on the table. I'm not worried about that anymore, because as you can see, if this stock had kept running, I would have just kept following it higher and higher. Same thing here. I would have just kept following it higher and higher. But given that the fact that it had weakness, it stopped me out. But it stopped me out at a good place. Same thing here. Stopped me out at a good place. This was all my fault. So, but I've still used my strategy to get out of it. Okay, that's enough. I'm rambling a little bit now. Again, I hope this was helpful. Mark Douglas, check him out when you guys have a chance, and feel free to leave questions, comments, whatever. Watch 2 other videos that I have. This is the 3rd video ever that I'm ever made, as I share my experience, as I continue to share my experience as a trader. Thanks guys, and happy trading tomorrow. Hope you guys had a good trading day today. Cheers.